distinguished guest. Welcome to another episode of Life on the Grid, hosted by Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish and Joe Samaniego. Tonight's guest, NASCAR Senior Coordinator for Track Content, Kenneth Lee Jr., and musical guest, Poulain. Welcome to Life on the Grid.
Here's a beautiful look at the uptown Charlotte area where fall is in the air. Welcome, distinguished guests, to Life on the Grid. We're very excited to have you join us as we wrap up the month of September. And with me, as always, Joe Samaniego. Joe, how are you doing tonight?
So far, so good. Just taking it easy on this beautiful day and just enjoying everything that we can right now here in Portland, Oregon. So.
Yeah, and for me, I'll be honest, it's certainly been quite a time for me because school's going on right now remotely, and it looks like we're gonna be resuming in person classes soon. So that's certainly gonna be interesting. And for the most part, I'm doing fine, but remote learning's been quite a struggle with all of those assignments and readings to complete. In some ways, it feels like there's not enough time in a day to get everything done, and I've really never been so stressed with school like this in my life. And some days I'll be honest with you, I feel like crying. I have no idea how I'm gonna get through the day and turn in all these assignments, but I'm just trying to do my best and manage, take it one day at a time, try my best no matter what happens. And when I was actually going through a rough stretch recently with my schoolwork, a friend reached out to me and just let me vent my frustrations and certainly gave me a lot of pointers on how to move forward with this. And right after talking, I think we talked about over an hour, I started feeling a lot better and thought about all of the good things happening in my life right now and focusing on all of the positives instead of dwelling on all of the negatives. And 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 certainly speaking of positives, it's been another exciting month for everyone here at the Grid Network. What can you tell the viewers about our newest program, Grid Girls?
Great Girls has been a lot of fun. I know we're about 3 episodes into this. Fourth one just got essentially released a couple days ago, so we're really excited about that. And it's been just really enjoying seeing the growth of the show. Great Girls, of course, we feature all the women racing around the world, whereas here in the United States, especially Jennifer Jo Cobb, Haley Deegan, and then, of course, across the world, we just coming off of Le Mans, where we saw Tatiana Calderon lead a group of women in LMP2 to essentially ninth place in class, 13th overall. And then, of course, the Iron Leagues and GTAM, they got ninth place in class as well. So definitely it's been a lot of fun following all the racing around the world, especially all the women, and just getting more airtime for all the women racing around the world. We don't see them mentioned a whole lot unless they're running up towards the front. So definitely it's been really great working with racers, the girls behind it, to make this possible.
Yeah, certainly really excited about our program. Great Girls. Can't wait to see more episodes every week, every Thursday. Working with Daniel over there in Europe. Been a very exciting time to bring a lot of coverage to the women racers all over the world. And along with Great Girls, the network hit a new milestone recently. We got our very first Patreon supporter. Is super exciting for all of us here, and we certainly encourage everyone to visit our Patreon link in the video description. And Joe, I know y'all have been dealing with all of the fires on the West Coast, especially you've been located in Oregon. How are you handling it all, and have things gotten better since you posted those photos of the eerie orange sky?
It definitely has gotten a lot better since that day. I know looking at the photos, it was just really orange, something out of a apocalyptic movie. I was just shocked seeing that. Especially, I've been near forest fires in Alaska and it's been smoky, but to see that red, it was just really crazy. I know with all the rain we've had on Thursday, Friday, heavy rains, that put a lot of fires either out or at a manageable position, which has been really good. So now the air is clear again. We can see blue sky. Our air quality is not hazardous like it was for a while. So it's been really good, but still, I know for a lot of families, Highway 22, just north of us, 15 minutes away, families can't get back to see what's left of their town, what's left of their home. And it's been really hard. And I know definitely encouraging everyone, we got a link below to the Red Cross here to donate for the Pacific Northwest, because definitely I know we've been doing all we can here in Oregon to try to help our neighbors through this tough time.
Well, Joe, I'm really glad to hear that you and your family are doing much better in Oregon. It's been really scary watching the news and all of those fires and see like, well, I think they said over 3 million or so acres have been burned, and seeing those towns that are completely gone, it's just really devastating to see. And hopefully the people who lost everything, they'll be able to recover at some point. But more importantly, I'm just glad that people were able to make out, and thoughts and prayers go to the families of those who didn't, and definitely continuing to keep everyone in the West Coast battling the fires in my thoughts and prayers. And now I think it's time for us to introduce this month's guest. I'm so excited to have this particular person on the show tonight. He's someone I consider a mentor and an amazing friend in NASCAR. He works as a senior coordinator track content for NASCAR and the Motor Racing Network. MRN, the voice of NASCAR, co-host of All Turns No Breaks podcast with Tam and Renee. Give them a listen. You certainly will not regret it. NASCAR Diversity Internship Program alum, Tuskegee University alum, and an Oklahoma City Thunder superfan. He's my buddy Kenny. Please give a warm welcome to Kenneth Lee Jr. Welcome, Kenny. I'm super excited to have you on the show tonight.
Hey man, I appreciate it a ton. I'm glad you guys had me on this week. It's pretty cool to be on here, and it's really been cool to, for one, definitely see the growth among both of you, for one, and specifically Kobe, because obviously we met in person, and over the last few years we've got to know each other, and it's been a blast, and it's been pretty cool. So I hope all is well. I hope you guys are doing well, because I know times are very different right now.
Yeah, certainly times are very different, and you're certainly right about you talking about my growth. Can you imagine a year ago that I would be up here on YouTube of all places, broadcasting live? This is really crazy. Remember when I was doing the Motorsports Mamba Hour last year? I was scared to death. I didn't know what to say. It was just really crazy. But as I've got more reps, like you've been telling me over the past few years, starting to feel a lot more comfortable on here. Yeah, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, but I'm out here and doing it, and that's the only thing that matters. And it's only going to get better from here on out. And Kenny, I got to ask you, how's life been treating you since the start of this pandemic?
Man, first off, I will say it has been great to see you continue to grow and continue to come into, being able to be on as a host and talking live on YouTube and having these videos produced. And this was something, I didn't think you were ever going to step into, because you said you didn't want to. But when you said you had the chance and you're like, you know what, I might as well try it out. It's been great. The growth has been great, which is always an important thing. And especially just like you asked me about the pandemic and how everything's been going, it's a great time to do it, because there's really nothing more you can do at this time. Like you got schoolwork, you have whatever else in between your hobbies, and you got to do whatever you have to do. And the greatest thing is being able to see you learn and continue to grow. And I've done the same thing as well, even throughout this pandemic. I mean, in May, I switched titles. So my original title when I came into the NASCAR family, or NASCAR family tree, however you want to go about it, was with MRN, Motor Racing Network. For those that don't know, I was an associate producer, but obviously my title doesn't really show every single thing I did. But if you guys have seen the social media handle change over the last like 2.5 years or so, that is because I was over them doing that, which has been fun. But over the spring, I transitioned to NASCAR officially, and now I'm a senior coordinator track content, and I work for the Midwest region. So I'm doing Kansas, Chicagoland, Michigan. Watkins Glen is in there somehow, and the Route 66 Speedway, which is a drag strip behind Chicagoland Speedway. So yeah, it's been a hell of a transition, I got to say, to do that. It was different. And if you guys have been able to tell, NASCAR social as a whole has changed quite a bit over the time. So now I've been a part of that. I've been able to see that. I've learned different things. And it's also been able to teach me things. Like, I'm not super handy with Photoshop. I'm going to be honest. I can only do with so much. Same thing with video. I'm still learning. And now I've been able to do that. I've also been able to continue podcasting as well, continue to keep brushing up on this, because just like you talked about, is reps. And I believe in doing reps upon reps upon reps just to get yourself better, continue to get yourself acclimated. And before you know it, you're able to freestyle and go offhand with, no problem most of the time. But a lot of that's been going on. Been trying to also maintain the shape and everything, not trying to get too big during this time. But yeah, that's really been the gist of it. Honestly, it's been a very weird time, but we're living in it. I've just embraced it, and most of my job is on a computer as it is, so it wasn't like a super difficult transition.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like you've been very busy throughout this entire pandemic, and I'm really glad that you've had something to keep you occupied instead just falling deep in everything going on in news right now. And everything going on in news is not really the most exciting things going on. A lot of sadness and just a bunch of things that can really make you feel depressed. And since it sounds like you've been keeping really busy doing social media for all of those tracks and a bunch of other things as well. I'm really glad you found something to keep your mind off of the things happening in the world. And while we're talking about the stuff that's been ongoing for a while with the pandemic and will continue to go on well into the foreseeable future, but Kenny, I want to flash back several years and discuss how we crossed paths on Twitter. I think at the time I was still in high school at Reedsville, and you were still at Tuskegee, I believe. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think I was still in school. I probably was either, matter of fact, you know what? I was either in my last year, or I was just fresh out of school that year, I think, because I still actually remember when you used to be NASCAR Daily. I do remember that. So yeah, I think it was around that time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, funny you mentioned NASCAR Daily. Yeah, for folks who don't know what NASCAR Daily was, that was like my little parody account that I created when I first got on Twitter, because I didn't want my mom to know that I created a Twitter because she was against social media, and that was the main reason why I created the little parody account NASCAR Daily, because I didn't want her, be searching on Google Kobe Lambert and see Kobe Lambert pop up. So I just said NASCAR Daily, throw up a picture of the NASCAR logo, and nobody will know it's me. And and then when I knew I wanted to get into this business full time someday, I knew I finally had to drop the parody account and become professional. And that's why my Twitter handle went from at NASCAR Daily to at Kobe Lambert. And a really crazy story because of that. I did not want my mom to know I was on social media. But yeah. But anyways, it's really crazy how far we've come, both of us, since those early days on Twitter. And I know there are so many things wrong with social media. It can be very toxic and mentally exhausting at times. And as we've seen recently, it can certainly get you in a lot of trouble. But I want to focus on the positive side of social media today. How did social media play a factor in helping you develop relationships with people who share the same love for motorsports as you?
So it's crazy, right? And I'll give my background on Twitter like a little bit deeper. Like, my page now is at Front Row Kenny, and that name was on a whim. I was at a National Association of Black Journalism, or NABJ for short, in DC. I believe this was 2016 or 17. Yeah, it was 16. Matter of fact, it was summer 16, going into my senior year of college. I had never been to one, and I go in there and I'm talking to people. I'm interacting with people, starting to learn people's names, and I'm like, man, I want to share my social, but that old page is like high school me, middle school me, because I've been on Twitter for over 10 years. Like, I've seen it all. I've seen Twitter change quite a bit from the time where we didn't have videos, we didn't have GIFs, we didn't have any of that, and it's grown quite a bit. And so I knew at the time I needed to make more of a professional account. And I guess sometimes I probably straddle the line between being professional and being myself on there, which I think is okay. I think you got to have a little bit of both. But I was in there and I'm like talking to a couple people, and I want to share my story and what I'm doing online at the time. And I'm like, well, it's time for me to make a Twitter name. So Joe Nemechek's nickname is Front Row Joe. Front Row Kenny, for some reason at the time, popped up in my head. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to stick with this for right now. I don't know if it's ever going to change. I may change it later. And we're sitting on, I think, 3 or 4 years now. I've never changed my name. And I don't plan to now, because it caught on for whatever reason. I didn't think it was going to be one of those things that catches on. And sometimes that's what happens. But for me, networking is actually what got me in the door at NASCAR. So I know we'll talk a bit later more so about NDIP, the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program. When I made that page, a friend of mine who works at Rouse, Sydney Freisen, she does all their social. They have a wonderful team, by the way. She's a wonderful person. Shout out to her. But she reached out to me on my Twitter and asked me about, was I ever interested in doing something in regards to NASCAR as a career. Now, if you asked me when I was 16, this wasn't a thought. Like, none of this was a thought. I've been a fan all my life, but a career was just something that never really crossed my mind. My mind was basketball, baseball, football, more so driven in that direction than anything. And so she reached out to me and asked me about the internship program. I was going into my senior year. I was like, well, I don't have a job lined up right now, but an internship could give me another break and I can get my way through the door that way if it works out. And when she told me about the program, I said, look, I'm going to make sure I get all this done, put it together. I put my application together, put it out there, let it fly. And then after that, I waited for quite some time. I went through about 3 interviews. My 4 interviews. My first 3 did not work out. My 4th one, someone dropped out on a whim for the NASCAR Foundation, and they called me the day after I graduated college. So I was riding on home, ready to go work at Six Flags again, like I've been doing for the last 3 years at the time. And they called me, did my interview in the car, kept driving on my way back home to Maryland. I got a text like maybe 30 minutes after that call from Lauren Houston, who used to be over the diversity program. Shout out to her too. She played a big role as well. And she said, look, you got the internship. So I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And then I went about after that, went down to Charlotte. And of course, I networked with a lot of those people via Twitter. I didn't know most of these people, but through Twitter, I started meeting people that way. And then obviously, like me and you, Kobe, I met you through Twitter and quite a few others that I know now because of Twitter. And so, it's played a vital role. And I got to say to like anybody that's like real young, interested, not even in just motorsports, but any other sport or any industry like this, is to use this tool. Twitter is a tool. It's funny a lot of days and has its moments as well, bad as well, but it can be a great networking tool, and it can just be natural as can be. It's you just having a conversation with somebody on social. You never know what it may lead to. You just don't know, but that's a cool thing I think is prominent in social media today.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Twitter is a really important tool to use, and especially for me personally, someone who didn't have any major connections in motorsports. I didn't know anyone who loved racing, and it was just, like, to be honest with you, very lonely growing up, being the only race fan. And I'm sure a lot of other NASCAR fans can attest to this. If you tell someone in school that you like NASCAR, they typically make fun of you and make up a bunch of left turn jokes. So you're not so in a way you feel like you're kind of left out. You're an outsider. And certainly getting on Twitter and meeting all of these people over the years, it certainly made me feel like I belong instead of excluded. And I was really glad that I was able to meet you and many others because of my situation. Not being able to be in the Charlotte area since I'm in Reedsville, North Carolina, is in the Greensboro area. Couldn't really go to the Charlotte area much. So Twitter was a great tool for me to use in order to network, and I really feel like that's opened up a lot of doors for me. And Kenny, I'm always going to be very appreciative for everything that you've done for me in both my personal and professional lives. And without you, I wouldn't get to cover the Charlotte Roval race in the past 2 years in the unique circumstances. Yeah, certainly very appreciative of that. And being able to go to the track for the first time in a professional setting was something that I'll never forget. Because I be honest with you, going out of high school, I didn't really think that none of that was possible. But you turned that dream into a reality for me, and certainly opened up a lot of new doors and caused me to have what I consider some of the best days of my life. And everything I do from here on out is a testament to you. And I really hope that I'll make you proud. And and always. And one thing that I really like about you is you don't tell me what I need to. I mean, you don't tell me what I want to hear, but you tell me what I need to hear. And I'll be honest, some of the things that you've told me before, it made me like put down my phone and just walk out of the room in the past. but yeah. But in the end, I know you meant well. You told me the things that pushed me forward, and that's why I'm here today talking with you right now. Without your honesty and care, I wouldn't be here talking to you on Life on the Grid. So definitely a true testament to you. I give you a lot of credit for a lot of things that I've been able to accomplish so far, and that's certainly a wonderful quality. I've been a great mentor that you are, and you've always seen things in me that I don't see in myself, but you always motivate me to keep on grinding no matter what. Why are you so passionate about helping young people like myself achieve our dreams, like you achieve yours of now working in NASCAR?
Man, you know what? First off, I'm gonna say I appreciate that a ton. Just right out the gate, I gotta say it's been great. Again, I said this earlier, but it's been great to watch the growth, and that's always a dope thing. Again, and just from the honesty level, that just comes from people above me that I've looked to, whether it's my mother or my father, who have been pretty much upfront with me most of my life. So, I've gotten used to that type of method. And same thing with Tam, who I co-host with on All Turns No Breaks, is like a mentor to me as well. She's very straight up and upfront with me, and definitely also played a role in helping me secure my job, actually. So she was really, upfront about my resume. Same thing with, her as well. My friend Deja Gilliam, she helped me out a ton, especially with my resume, because she is a master at that. I can't get it right still. I try my best to do it, but I swear she is like a master at it. But just saying that already, I think looking at the youth is always something that's going to be important to me, because I feel like, yeah, I might have made it to NASCAR. I might have done this and that. But it's like, at the end of the day, in reality, I'm not going to be the only one here forever, so to speak. And I look at the youth and I'm like, look, if I can help somebody out in some capacity, it's important to me. It feels really important to me. And I know you said a lot about, this is for me, et cetera, et cetera. I know you're doing this for yourself, and I want you to do that. No matter what you do, as long as you keep hustling and you keep doing what you do and you make yourself proud, that's going to make me proud. That's going to make me happy. That's all I really care about at the end of the day. I just want other people to succeed as well, because my success isn't the only one. And the thing is, especially being Black and being in an industry like this, it's always amazing to see more people who look like us. So I got to say, if they can trust me, for example, or anybody else that I notice in this industry, it's going to help them in the long run and say, okay, we had this guy, he's recommending the next guy up. We can definitely trust his word, take his word, and expect, great things from that other person as well. And that's a super important thing. And even to my other mentees, I tell them the same thing. Look, I'm not on your head because I don't care. I'm a mean person. I have people in my head probably 20 times worse than what I do most of the time. Because I mean, it's just different. And the thing is, I've also had to learn that everyone takes things differently than I may. Some people would consider some of the things I've heard as like harsh, but in reality, for a person like myself, in the way I motivate myself on a daily basis, is that stuff will get me going for whatever reason. Somebody else, they might just fold up. But if I talk to people in a different way, sometimes it helps them out further. So, that's just always forever going to be an important thing. I just want people to do great things and just keep being better, man. Like that's it. That's like a super duper important thing for me in life. I always want to give back. I haven't had a chance to really give back to Tuskegee like I want to yet, but in the long run, I'm definitely going to, especially to our communications program, because it was literally birthed as I walked on campus in 2013.
Yeah, certainly. I really appreciate the fact that yes, you've already made it to NASCAR now, but you're willing to help the next set of people who had the same dreams as you. And I feel like it's very important to pay it forward, because I feel like some people forget where they came from and forget that they were once this college senior who wanted to work in NASCAR, and without their assistance, they probably wouldn't make it otherwise. So I feel like it's certainly super important to get back and look out for that next generation of talent. I know Joe and I here at Grid Network, we're always brainstorming new ideas, new programs for the future. And when we're evaluating people who we want to potentially add to our program someday, one of the things that I do, I'm searching on Twitter looking for anyone who's interested in working in NASCAR someday. And with our program Grid Girls, I was actually ran across a few prospects of people who were in college and said they wanted to be in NASCAR media. And while we didn't we didn't get hire them for the program that we're doing right now, they're still going to be on our list for later on. Yeah, and one thing I want to do is give people opportunities, help them get their names out there, because people gave me opportunities when they didn't have to, and took a chance on me, like with the podium finish. Rob Youngson, he gave me an opportunity, like right after I left my school's newspaper, because it just did not work out for me, and I had no idea what I was going to do after that. And yeah, I posted about it on Twitter. Rob come across it, and like, hey, I'm going to give you a chance to be with the podium finish, and I was absolutely elated. Yeah, and podium finish has been a great place for me since 2018. Still there today, and and then when all of my internship opportunities fell apart in the spring because of the pandemic, I started working here with Joe at Grit Network. So I really do believe that everything worked out the way that it should have right now. And speaking of Joe, I think he's been really anxious to ask you some questions about your time at NDIP and Tuskegee. So Joe, the floor is yours.
I gotta say, that I really enjoyed listening to you both. Great conversation and just learning so much, especially about Kobe. Wonderful stuff. Now, I know you mentioned NASCAR's diversity internship program, 10-week internship program during the summer. Definitely provide interns opportunity to work in NASCAR. Why is that program such a popular internship for college students to take advantage of? And can you describe, especially if somebody's out there listening, thinking about it, how was your experience with the internship program?
Yeah, so that internship program alone was incredibly vital to like taking any steps I got to making my career now as it is. I mean, my thing is, you would think in 10 weeks, someone is probably thinking already on the top of their head, how much can you really do in 10 weeks? But you'd be really surprised by how much information you get from the industry, from people you meet at the track, whether it's people who are on teams, whether people who are within the industry buildings working from Charlotte, Charlotte, New York, and the California office and the Daytona Beach office. Like, you'll meet a lot of people. And the thing is, you would think being a small fish in a big pond like that, you wouldn't have a ton of opportunities to get to know people, to talk to people, to understand like what are their roles, but you get every single opportunity to do so. And the thing is, it's not even just the folks that's within your industry. It's also some of the people who you're interning with in that class. Most of the people who were in my classes, both in 2017 and 2018, I'm still relatively close to a lot of those people. Some of them are working in NASCAR still to this day. Some people have worked in sports, and some of their connections within NASCAR from those 10 weeks have launched them to another position, whether it's in the same sport or a different sport, a team, doesn't matter. But it's a huge, huge opportunity. And I definitely, not just a PR stunt, I'm just telling you guys straight up how it was is, look, it's an opportunity that I wouldn't pass up. And I'm glad I never passed up on. I'm glad I got it for one and was fortunate enough for people to look out for me moving forward. And it helped out a lot because, I mean, you get the experience being at tracks, all the teams, all the industry insiders, the media members as well are very friendly as well, because you'll end up meeting some of them as you're out the track and you're out and about. But it's a really important program. And I hate the fact that it didn't happen this year due to COVID, but definitely for anybody looking towards doing something like that or want to work in sports, even if you don't want to work in NASCAR, it'll give you an experience that you're working in sports that you probably won't get anywhere else. You're not going to get this hands-on. It's not just you paper pushing and you just giving people coffee. You actually get to work on projects. So, it was great. I worked on a couple things while I was there both years for Talladega and the NASCAR Foundation. So, I mean, no matter where you go, you have a chance to be that in depth. It's almost like being a full-time person for 10 weeks and get to experience everything. So definitely recommend that program 100%.
Wow, that's really amazing to hear. As you mentioned, of course, this year it didn't happen with everything going on with the pandemic. Is it going to be something where folks are going to be looking forward to coming back in 2021, seeing this program? Because it sounds like not only is it really great for the college students going out there, but for the teams to, hey, here's what our team is about, here's what our track is about, and exposing them. Is it something where you see this is going to come back stronger next year in 2021?
That's definitely the hope. I hope everyone is healthy, everyone is well, everything is normal as we can get it, and we can have the program roll on again. Because, I mean, you get a great experience out the gate. I mean, from orientation orientation was during All-Star weekend. I'm not sure how that'll, pan out depending on, what's available and what isn't. But you get to be at the track. You're really in depth. You're at a race, and a lot of people I met there and I'm friends with, like I said, that was their first race. They didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And some people were, a couple of people like myself and a few others were able to like teach people on the fly and let them learn about what the sport is. And I've had people who didn't watch it going in, and now they watch it because they've gained an interest just from being an intern, which I think is a cool thing. And I mean, again, it's just the ultimate overall experience is what's going to make that. And I think if people end up experiencing it, are probably going to be like, I can't believe this. And I'm vouching for this for any ever internship. I don't know any of them that get you that in depth for an entirety of a summer. So definitely hope it comes back strong in 2021. Cause look, I'm vouching for somebody. So if there is some student watching this podcast this week, look, I'm here for you. I'll vouch for you. All you got to do is back it up for me and work hard. I'm all right. That's all I'm asking.
I hear you. Yeah, I know, especially for young upcoming college students, that this just sounds like a really great opportunity. I know Kobe has tried to go for this opportunity, especially this year with the cancellation. It didn't work out. I know, thankfully, with the timing of the Grid Network, having Kobe, I've been super excited to have him on the program here, working with me, helping really Grid Network. A lot of it is, I think, Kobe, just what he contributes and everything. So it's been really fun. And definitely, I'm just really excited to hear about the program, especially hopefully you'll come back next year. Now, I know you're a proud alumni of Tuskegee University. Kobe told me you accomplished a lot inside and outside the classroom. And especially, I know when it comes to being aware of some of the play-by-play with Tuskegee athletics and growing into leading the athletic communication departments. Overall, what was your college experience like? And how did it prepare you for your current position?
Yeah, college was interesting. I love Tuskegee to death. Like I said before, I definitely hope, again, the pandemic is well and over and we can go back to normal. I would love to go back to a football game and do some work again. Like I really would love to get back, of course, working with some of my folks. But out the gate, when I went to college, my first thought process was like, look, I'm here to work. I'm here to get whatever I need to get done, take care of whatever business I need to take care of, and make sure I'm professionally prepared as much as I can when I got out of school. So when I got there, our communications program was like brand new out the gate. And just to keep a long story short, it was only 4 of us who graduated. It was myself and 3 of my other friends. I was only male in that group, but it was a pretty cool experience because I got to know my classmates a whole lot better because we pretty much took every single class together. So, that was different. And while I was there, I was a sports writer for the Campus Digest, and I covered pretty much everything at Tuskegee I could, whether it was football, basketball, softball, baseball, sometimes tennis as well. Just try to get my hands on every single thing I could and every footprint I could while I was at Tuskegee. So that was part of that. Then rolling on to my junior year, late in that year, I was working with athletics. I was actually doing the books. So during the basketball games, I would keep the score, keep the fouls, do all that. It was something I did in middle school and sometime in high school. I thought I was never going to pick that skill up again. But when I asked my athletic director at the time, I was like, hey, is this like high school? Is it the same thing? He was like, yeah, the book is exactly the same. I'm like, great, perfect. So that whole thing worked out. I did that for about a year. And then going into my senior year, my athletic director, Travis, can't think of his last name off the jump, but showing love to Travis Jerome, that's his name. He opened up our digital department, right? So he eventually created what is now the Tuskegee Digital Network. And fortunately, I was able to be a part of that as a play-by-play and color commentator for football and basketball for a little while, baseball as well. That was a fun time, but my time got cut short a little bit in that first semester because of appendicitis. I had my appendix ruptured, so I was out for a couple months. From October 2016, October all the way through pretty much December. I was at home. I was at home most of the time. I was in the hospital for about a week. And by the time I came back, it was just finals. There was nothing going on. So I had no games or anything I could cover. So I was just worried about getting healthy at that point. And after that, our then athletic director left. So I was the most senior role. I had no choice but to help out with some of my younger students. And I pretty much kind of dropped the mic situation, wasn't really on the mic anymore at the time. And then after that, once that went through, I helped out with athletics from make sure all the game day setup was perfect. The broadcast was set. The stats were sent to the NCAA. It was a lot to take in for like a couple months, but it was a great experience and something I would never trade for the world, because a lot of those same people are still at school and they're still doing their thing and they're doing great. So yeah, my college was pretty hectic. Tried to be professional as I possibly could and learn much as I can. And it helped out a lot, honestly. There's things I didn't think I was able to do out the gate, but it worked out for me.
That's amazing. It sounds like an amazing time doing that. One question I know, when it comes to, especially when you did play-by-play color commentary, I know Alaska Raceway Park in Alaska, where I was born and raised, they were the first place that gave me the opportunity to, okay, you're the racetrack announcer. You're going to interview the drivers in pit road. And it was just something where I never really had experience. I've seen it on TV, watched the videos of ESPN, TNN, try to learn. When it came for you and play-by-play, was that something that you wanted to get in, or just something where it was like, hey, you're going to be doing this? And it was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, it was actually a thing I wanted to do for quite some time. It took 3.5 years for it to come to Tuskegee. So I was waiting for that opportunity. I probably had a couple chances where I was on a halftime show for a local radio station during football season once or twice. I had a chance to do that. So that was like my first taste. But when it came down to the Tuskegee Digital Network, just like you in your situation, it was like, okay, guys, here's the mics, do your thing. Boom, boom, bap. I wish I still had the footage from that one. It was terrible. I'm not gonna lie. It was awful, but it sounded like I was reading straight off of paper, and that was it. And it was like no emotion. Like how I'm talking now was nowhere near where it's at like at that time. So once I started to get in the flow, it kind of sucked because I had got sick and I went to the hospital and I was out of my rhythm at that time. And by then, it was almost time for me to go back home for school. And so the only thing that kept me on a mic was doing a podcast. And before All Turns, No Breaks, I had my own NASCAR podcast called The Provisional Podcast. And I was doing that by myself, producing it, making sure it got out every week for quite some time. I did that for a little while, but then All Turns, No Breaks came up and they added me as a guest. And I kept being a guest. And then eventually this will be my second full-time season with them. But yeah, so the play-by-play thing in general is something I want to go back to at some point in my career. Like it's something that I've always loved to do. It was something fun. It was really fun. I think that's the thing. I'm not saying I'm the greatest by any means yet. I still have practiced and getting better at it, but it was just something that was always fun. And I thought to further stretch out, like being involved with sports, because in middle school and high school, I wasn't like a Letterman athlete. I wasn't a 5-star athlete on 24/7 or nothing. So being able to be involved with sports, this was my thing. This was my bread and butter. And I like talking. So I thought it was perfect, and hopefully as time moves on, I definitely want to get back into that, whether it's TV or radio.
It's always a lot of fun, I think, especially I really enjoyed it. It sounded like you had a really fun time, big blast. And I know I did just a short track, college sports. It has to be something else, all the different variety of sports that you got to cover. So definitely just really enjoying it. Just again, thank you for being on the program. I know Kobe has a lot of questions to ask and follow up as well, so definitely I'll give him the floor again.
Yeah, and while we're on the subject of Tuskegee and sports, let's talk about the significance of the Tuskegee Airmen. And when the NFL team in DC announced the name change, there were several names that I saw online. For now, they're going to be called the Washington Football Team, but they should have a new name at some point in the future. And one of the rumored names that really got my attention was the Washington Red Tails. And Kenny, for everyone out there who may not know about the connection between the name Red Tails and the Tuskegee Airmen, can you enlighten us all a little bit?
And the Tuskegee Airmen was a very huge thing, like during the early war days. I mean, obviously there weren't really there weren't a huge amount of black airmen in the military forces for quite some time, and so once that barrier got broken into aviation, the Tuskegee Airmen is probably one of the more significant ones that I know of, at least that I can speak on to some degree. During their time, they were huge. And I mean, those P-51 Mustangs are some of the coolest looking planes I've ever seen in my life. And if you've seen the movie as well, there's a Red Tails movie out that hit Disney. That was from Disney, and it was pretty big. And I gotta say, it would be something else for the Red Tails to have a historic, be on a team, and the history behind it, I think, would be great for people to start learning about. Because look, we have had the Washington Redskins in DC for at least as long as I was living, and even further than that. With that whole thing, I just think that the Red Tails is something that's historic, and I think it's something that's not necessarily problematic in these days. And it could be a huge footprint for them. And I mean, it could help out Tuskegee to some degree. That definitely could turn into quite a relationship. It could mean whether it's coaching, whether it's being able to create jobs because of that, whether it's just enlightening fans on that. And I think it would be a pretty cool thing if we actually got the Red Tails to become a name. I'm still a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I will say that's a cool name out the gate.
Yeah, you mentioned you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. How about them Cowboys winning that game against the Falcons? I believe the score was 40-39, and once again the Falcons blew a huge lead. It seems like that's what happens nowadays in Georgia sports. Yeah, but whether it's the Red Tails or something entirely off the charts, can't wait to see what name Washington picks. And looking at the current Washington football team, seems like they're certainly rebuilding from the bottom all the way to the top. And new head coach Ron Rivera is certainly bringing a new culture into Washington. And recently, Rivera was diagnosed with cancer, and certainly praying hard for Riverboat Ron. Me being a Carolina Panthers fan, I know he was such a beloved figure during his time in Carolina, and myself, many Panthers fans, we truly miss and appreciate the good times he brought our franchise in Charlotte. And certainly looking forward to seeing what he does for Washington. Yeah, Ron's certainly a strong guy, and I'm positive that he's going to beat cancer, because Ron Rivera is a good man both on and off the field. And certainly looking at his roster, the team has a few bright spots despite some of the growing pains that they're going to experience. They have a young signal caller in Dwayne Haskins as quarterback. It looks like Haskins is certainly going to need some time to develop, but the potential is there. I feel like Haskins could do better if they find him some better protection on the offensive line and surround him with more talent in that defense front seven. I think they have a lot of potential and young pieces to play with. And one player with superstar potential is Chase Young from Ohio State, and Washington drafted him in the first round of the most recent NFL draft. And I think Chase Young could certainly develop into one of the most elite, feared pass rushers in the league. And I'm aware that you are somehow connected to this talented young man. How in the world did that happen?
Man, it's crazy, right? So again, going back to the whole tip of me not really being an athlete in high school and middle school, I'm just going to be candid as possible. I was incredibly short in middle school, and I'm like, okay, basketball is cool. I love playing basketball. I had fun with it. And I think it was the 7th grade, I believe, I tried out for the middle school basketball team. I did not make that team. I can tell you that right now. There were like 40 kids. I was probably the shortest one out of maybe like one or two other kids over my height at the time. And I'm like, man, initially I'm like kind of bummed out. I'm young, 12, 13 years old at the time. Like, man, it sucks. And so I'm like, okay, what else could I do? I'm like, what in the world else could I do? And so his dad actually was our coach for our middle school basketball team, was also a security guard in my school at the time. And he asked me, he said, look, do you know how to do the book? I'm like, no, I don't know anything about it. I said, look, I'm a stats guy. I like stats. I like sports in general. So, I mean, I know how to keep up with it if you teach me. And so he taught me how to do the book. And for that entire middle school year, I was literally on the same bus with all my friends. Of course, Chase was also on the team. And they had a great year. I don't think they won the championship. They just missed it by like one game, which was pretty crazy at the time. Like it sucked, but we're like middle school. So eventually you just get over it and keep moving. But working with them, I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. And Chase didn't stay at my school for quite a long time. And then after that, he moved along. He went to DeMatha. And I remember, it's crazy. I remember on TV one day, my mom and dad were watching high school football. I came home and they were like, he's like, you remember that guy? I was like, yeah. I'm like, this ain't the same Chase I knew when I was in middle school. He was like yay high. So it was pretty crazy once he, obviously sprung out and became a true athletic monster, legit. And I'm like, dang, that's kind of crazy. It's like, wow, he really grew up and became something. And when he went to Ohio State, I followed him like all the way through because I was like, yo, this is pretty cool. I hadn't seen his dad for quite some time, but when I was working at Safeway, a local grocery store in Maryland, I was working at the cash register, and I noticed this guy is tall as can be. Probably would be tall up to my light. Like, that's how tall Chase's dad was. So it wasn't surprising how tall Chase ended up being. But super cool guy. Always was real cool. Super nice to my family. Always has been. Always would speak when we saw each other. So, it was a pretty crazy connection how that happened. So when I saw him get drafted, I was like, yo, that's amazing, man. It's cool to see local homegrown talent become something, whether it's the NFL, the NBA. It's a pretty dope thing, and then just for him to be at the home team, that's pretty neat. So, yes, that is my Chase Young story. It's crazy, random connection.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really nice to see homegrown talent make it to the big leagues. And I've told you about him before. From Reedsville, we got Breon Pass, who's a star basketball player and senior in high school. He's actually going to be making his decision very soon where he's going to be playing. I think he's narrowed it down to 4 schools: NC State, East Carolina, Georgia Tech, and all the way up north in Providence. Yeah, so certainly whoever gets Breon is certainly going to get a great player, and he's certainly one of the most hyped athletes that my town has seen in a very long time, and very excited to see which college he chooses, how good he's going to be in college, because a lot of people really believe that he has the potential to make it to the NBA in the future. And speaking of the NBA and basketball, I know how much you love the Florida Gators and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, and focusing on the NBA, your Oklahoma City Thunder seem to have a lot of solid pieces on the roster right now, young pieces, and they're headed in the right direction. But they did make a move after their season concluded, parted ways with head coach Billy Donovan, and many did wonder heading into the season, how would the Thunder fare in the post Russell Westbrook era? They certainly exceeded expectations in my opinion. I didn't really think the Thunder were going to be that good this year. Would certainly surprise me, and I'm sure you're very excited to see what's going to happen next with them. And thinking about the future of Oklahoma City Thunder basketball, what are some of the moves that will be needed to? Let me rephrase that. What are some of the moves that need to be made over the next several years if they want to become top contenders in the NBA?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I am a huge Gators fan. We got one more week till football starts, so I'm pretty excited for that. But basketball-wise, Oklahoma City, that whole story and how I became a fan is also a little different. The way I came into sports was interesting. The only thing I used to watch was NASCAR for quite some time, and everything else just like kind of grew as I got older and older. By 5th grade, I was watching pretty much everything under the sun. But I will say the Thunder have definitely exceeded my expectations this season. I didn't think this was going to be a playoff year, let alone a 4th or 5th seed. I couldn't have imagined that. My best guess was like an 8th seed. It barely scraped into the playoffs. It is not to knock like the team that's there. It was more so I was thinking ahead, like, okay, you got an older vet in Chris Paul, and we're talking about someone who has a pretty hefty contract. And I'm like, he wants to be on a contender, even though we pretty much almost got to that point. Taking the Rockets to 7 games this year. When we had it like that, I'm like, okay, he's probably going to be dealt with by the time the break comes out and it's time for the trade deadline. It's going to be him, Gallo, gone by the end of the year. That was my expectation, but it was pretty cool to see how they ended up meshing all together when it came to CP3, Danilo Gallinari, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, because I'm going to say his name 1,000 times throughout the next couple of years probably, is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. That young man coming out of Kentucky was amazing there, and I didn't know what his potential was, honestly, because I didn't watch a lot of Kentucky basketball, but he has shaped out to be quite a pro. I mean, his first season with the Clippers was pretty good, and I was definitely on watch then, and I still remember the night when Paul George and Westbrook had moved in the same day, and we ended up getting him several picks and Chris Paul and Danilo. But I was like, man, this team has some potential, but I feel like they're just going to blow it up by trade deadline. And they didn't do that. So I was like, okay, whatever happens this season, I'll take it because I feel like they're going to end up blowing it up and making a brand new team, which it seems like that's what's going to happen. I think Chris Paul might get dealt by the end of the summer, or if not early into whenever the next season starts. But yeah, it's been pretty interesting. The same thing with Billy Donovan being out now. My guess is a small market team being hurt by the money situation with COVID bringing that happening, causing that to happen, is probably why he didn't get brought back in terms of like the money. But I thought he was doing a pretty good job of what he had. Wasn't a big fan of the inbound play in Game 7, but overall, I thought he was doing a really good job in what he could with the squad that he had. And a lot of young players broke out. I mean, it was amazing to see Lou Dort play. He was a great defender, but offensively started to break out was something I didn't expect to see. I mean, he closed it out with 30 points to finish the year, which is pretty amazing. So it'll be interesting to see how that team's developed. I mean, you've got plenty of draft picks for the next couple of years, so you might be able to find a gem in the draft if you make the correct moves to do so. And we'll see how it moves forward. But I'm excited for the future of Oklahoma City Thunder basketball.
Yeah, Oklahoma City Thunder certainly have an exciting future ahead. I wish I could say the same about my Charlotte Hornets. It's been a long time since we've had something to cheer about. See, I don't know what needs to be done in Charlotte. It's really frustrating because I'm still behind my team, but it seems like we're going in like 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 different directions. I don't have no idea where this franchise is going. And when we lost Kemba Walker, I thought, oh, it's gonna be bad for a while. And we're up there in the draft. Maybe we'll be lucky and snag a really good player, and like our next Kemba Walker, face of the franchise, and we'll be able to get up there at some point, maybe the next 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah, try to contend. Yeah, but definitely, I sometimes feel like being a Charlotte Hornets fan was like being a fan of the Cleveland Browns in the NFL. Yeah, like you still love your team to death despite all of their struggles and challenges. But definitely, always a Charlotte Hornet fan, and also have a team in the Western Conference, Los Angeles Lakers. Because of the late great Kobe Bryant, and as everybody knows, I was named after him. So at least I would stay loyal to my hometown team, and also cheer for the good team as well.
Hey, look, ain't nothing wrong with that. Trust and believe. Hey, look, don't feel so bad either. I'm a Mets fan when it comes to baseball. So I saw that one World Series a few years ago. I was so happy, but I was so sad at the end of that series against the Royals. But, it is what it is. But I still enjoy them.
Yeah, definitely. And I really love how both of us are very sports-minded people, can talk about multiple sports and, not just NASCAR and all of that. And really enjoyed chatting with you about the Tuskegee Airmen, football and basketball. And now I think Joe wants to talk a little bit of NASCAR with you.
Definitely a little bit of NASCAR, but definitely it was really fun listening. I know being a loyal South Carolina Gamecock fan, our football team, that's a lot of heartbreak. Every year I was there, we were number 6 in the country, and then we lose to Kentucky after we beat Alabama the week before. I was like, oh my gosh, it was brutal. But definitely, I know growing up sounded like very similar. Play with NASCAR diecast cars, listening, watching NASCAR growing up, and I know, especially now that you're working with NASCAR MRN, must sort of feel like a dream come true. You're working in an industry that you grew up, had fun following. Now you're in that field, and from what I understand, it sounded like your dad also knew the Burton brothers, Jeff and Ward Burton. Is there any particular stories that stand out from your dad about the two drivers?
Yeah, my dad actually, he went to high school with both of them. I think another one of my family members as well was still in school at the time when both Ward and Jeff were in there. So that was pretty cool. And that's literally what kickstarted my NASCAR fandom, because my dad told me when I was like real young, he was like, hey, look, he showed me a yearbook from Halifax County in South Boston about the fact that he went to school with them. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. And so he told me about that. And for whatever reason, listen, I've been a Burton fan for all my life. I know you might not meet too many of them, but here I am. I supported Jeff Burton all the way until he retired. It was very weird when he retired. So like now even though I've experienced it once, I do feel the pain for people who have experienced a Tony Stewart, a Jeff Gordon, a Dale Jr. Like it's different because you're like used to seeing them on Sunday. Like at least as far as I can remember, I know it was the late 90s, of course, and I had all the diecast and stuff, but 2002 was like probably 2001 was the Daytona 500, unfortunately, was my first memory of NASCAR. And then 2002, when Ward won the 500, I remember watching that race from start to finish as a kid. I can still remember that one clear as day. Had a fat back TV in the living room and everything, watching it on NBC. I still remember that like clear. And so, that was something else. And my dad tells me he had been at parties with Ward and Jeff at the time at their house. And like, it was a cool thing for that. And so I said, why not? I might as well just go ahead and stick to it and stick to him as a fan. Like, I respected drivers. I don't think I ever disliked anybody really. So, Jeff was always my guy. Ward always showed support as well throughout his career. Of course, I got diecast from both of them. So, yeah, that fandom never stopped, and that pretty much fueled my fandom for NASCAR, and it never went away. Like, it literally never went away. A lot of times things like that go away, but yeah, that's my dad's fault and why NASCAR is a thing. And here we are, some 22 years later, or 24 years later, really.
I hear you. Yeah, it's very similar. Dad got me into motorsports. Cable television had just come to Alaska, so ESPN and Speed World, NASCAR, Formula One, everything. And definitely it was interesting you bring up about, especially when Jeff Burton retired. Growing up, I remember Harry Gant. He was one of my favorites, Mr. September. When he retired, I remember just saying, oh, man. Well, Sterling Marlin won the Daytona 500. I started Sterling Marlin. Then I went to Las Vegas, my first race, as he was with Ginn Motorsports, and the end of his career. And then he didn't get the big send-off go away like we see Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., a little bit more of all of a sudden the team folded. So definitely it's interesting just seeing your favorite driver all of a sudden gone. But it's definitely I still watch the sport, watch NASCAR. Now, I know several years ago, Kobe interviewed you for an article for The Podium Finish, and before you started working with MRN. At the end, at the time, you were essentially your goal was to get in radio broadcasting with NASCAR or MRN or PRN as well. Ultimately, you made it to Motor Racing Network. What's been your favorite memory so far working with the Motor Racing Network?
The crazy thing about that is that's one of my favorite memories was when I was actually an intern with NASCAR at the time. So when I was at the foundation, that is where I met pretty much most of the people I know now at MRN. I met all of those people at the time in Daytona that year. It was a July race, and I was out there on that Saturday for the Xfinity race. Obviously, that race got rained out, but I hung out with them both on Friday and that Saturday afternoon. Mike Bagley, who has also been a big influence in my career as well, he used to live in Maryland, actually, so that was a automatic connection right out the gate, obviously hailing from Delaware, but he spent some time there as well. And I remember folks at the foundation work with MRN quite a bit, and I was like, hey, look, if I can shadow them, that'd be great. If it's possible, we'll see. And so maybe about a week before Daytona, they let me know. They was like, hey, look, you can shadow them. You can spend some time with them. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. And I'm like, these are the same people I used to listen to in the car. I'm like, yo, this is something else. I mean, we're talking Mike Bagley, Steve Post, Kim Kuhn, Winston Kelly, Dave Moody and company. Like, I'm Alex Hayden. Like, I'm in a truck with all the people I've listened to like most of my life. I don't really get starstruck anymore after a couple years of being around like celebrities and famous athletes, so to speak. But I was still like caught in that moment, like, man, this is crazy. I'm like, oh, this is really crazy. And so Mike found me in the media center, and he had let me know. He's like, hey, look, we're gonna come. You can come with me in the turn or come with me at the backstretch, and we can watch the entire race and get a headset and all this other stuff. And so the connection was like automatic right at that point. And me and him had started talking and everything, and we kept up with one another after the fact. And he obviously was a big help for me as well, getting the job at MRN. Him and Alex both vouched for me. And of course, my man at Talladega, my man Russell Branham, cannot forget him as well. He was a big part in that. But yeah, that moment we climbed up the super stretch, like where he stands to broadcast a race. It is the craziest looking view you're ever going to get at Daytona. I promise you. It's not the spotter level, but as a fan at the time, and I'm still a fan, of course, but I was way up high on the backstretch, and I'm like, man, I can see literally everything. I could turn around, I could see the tri-oval, I could see turns 1 and 2. And then when they all hurl down the super stretch, it is insane to see that way. Like, I mean, it was crazy. And so that moment right there, I was like, man, I'm really here. That was like a I'm really here type moment, and I couldn't believe it at the time. So, doing that was a huge thing. And again, I'm super grateful for all the opportunities I've had. But yeah, that moment was pretty special.
Wow. I visited Daytona, but I haven't been there for a race yet. One of these days, it's going to happen.
We got to get you out there, man. We're going to get you out there.
Definitely. I know one of the things you also do, the podcast, All Turns, No Breaks. You, Tam, and Renee, y'all talk about NASCAR. Definitely a podcast. I know I'm still getting new into listening to podcasts. I'm going to definitely be checking out. For all our viewers out there, why should they listen to All Turns, No Breaks? I know definitely want to learn more about your podcast.
Yeah, so just like I was talking about earlier, the way that even came about was just very sporadic. When I was doing my own podcast, I had saw Tam and Renee's page, All Turns No Breaks, on Twitter. I didn't know who they were. Like, I was so confused, and I was like incredibly new to the NASCAR Twitter realm. So I was just learning as I go and learning on the fly and meeting different people at the time. So when she approached me to be a guest, I was like, okay, yeah, why not? Sure, let's do it. I'm game for it. And so I had done it a couple more times that year. And I was like, okay, yeah, this was fun. This is pretty cool. Everything was really fun. And by chance, we all really meshed well together. Like, it's a weird chemistry, because the thing is, I just met Tam in person a year ago at Charlotte. I haven't met Renee yet in person, but you would think we all know each other just like very well in person and have known each other for a long time just by listening to an episode right out the gate. So it's pretty crazy how that whole dynamic came across. And then once, I think 2018, I was a guest again a couple times during the playoffs. And then 2019, when I transitioned out here to MRN, it was like, okay, we can do this for the entire year. We want to have you on for the entire year. I was like, okay, great. Why not? So I stopped doing my podcast completely. I was like, all right, you know what? This is going to be my main dig every single week. It comes out every week on Wednesdays. Typically, that's how we're going to do it. I was like, all right, great. It's perfect. So then after that, the first season went really well. It was a learning process, of course, because I had to get used to being on air with them, more than once in a few months or so. So like once we got used to it, obviously the 36-week grind becomes very real, or 38-week grind comes very real. Like when you're balancing work, then the podcast, and then just living after that. Like it was quite a balance. It was quite something for me to get used to, but I did. And we're going on 1 year number 2. And so I got to say, for my fans out there that's looking for a podcast, and you may be new to NASCAR, like we've gained quite a few different fans from different spectrums. We really try to keep it as simple as can be. I may go on a tangent about some stuff as technical from time to time, but for the most part, we keep it very relaxed and very chill. And just to make sure, like any fan that's brand new, that may be brand new to the sport, like I said, this year, they can dive in, they can understand, and they can follow along. They may not know every single detail and nuance just yet, but we'll keep you informed enough to know what's happening, our opinions on it, because we all have a background in racing. We all love motorsports. So it's not like we're going to go in there and give you a random opinion that has no backing at all. We're going to make sure we give you opinions that have backing. So if you want some good takes, some interesting hot takes at times as well, you'll definitely enjoy it, because my favorite hot take of the year so far was myself in February. I said, the 2020 season, I don't know how people are going to feel about it, because we're getting ready for the next gen car in 2021. And I was pretty wrong about that. We've got a wild season. The next gen car is debuted in another year from now, again, or 2022. So I didn't get either of those things right. But again, we have fun. And that was just my initial thought process before COVID happened. But yeah, make sure you guys check us out at Turns No Breaks on Twitter. You can also follow myself at Front Row Kenny. Renee is, I believe his name is at Renee Garcia. Tam is I Am Sincerely Tam on Twitter. You can follow them. Well, I'll make sure I give these guys give their Twitter names so you guys can go check them out. They're all cool people. And yeah, give us a listen. Give us a review on iTunes, Spotify. We just got on Amazon Music, as a matter of fact. iHeartRadio. Look, we're here. We're on every platform, so we're not leaving anybody out. Google Podcasts as well. We won't leave y'all out, so we got everybody covered.
Awesome stuff. And definitely we'll have all the links in our video description right here on YouTube. So definitely encourage everyone to check them out. I know Kobe's been listening as well too. A lot of stuff, and definitely Kobe, I know it's been a lot of fun. This is a really fun episode.
Yeah, certainly a lot of fun. Like I've known Kenny for several years now. Really appreciate the friendship we have, and everything I mentioned earlier. Everything he's done for me professionally. Certainly would not be where I am today without Kenny. Yeah, and I feel like your ears are gonna bleed me saying this over and over, even off air as well. Saying I really appreciate everything you've done for me. Yeah, and being able to go to Charlotte Motor Speedway past 2 years with the Roval. I understand, not gonna happen this year. It's gonna be really crazy watching the Roval on TV for the first time after being there the past 2 years. Like I was wondering, do I want to cover that race in front of a TV, or is it just gonna make me sad and depressed? But I'm probably just gonna put those feelings aside, go and just keep it business as normal. But because I know that there's gonna be a lot more Charlotte Rovals in all of our futures. And I know we've talked about various subjects so far, but for the final topic of tonight, I really want to focus on something more serious. So on last month's episode of Life on the Grid, we discussed the topic of racing and racism with our guest Darius Goodman, who's an award-winning sports editor and radio show host based in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And Darius is a Black man in the racing community. I want to ask you some of the similar questions that we asked Darius last month to get your perspective on some of the progressive changes that NASCAR has made recently. And we saw NASCAR take a stand against racism and bigotry after the news about George Floyd's death caused unrest throughout the country. NASCAR and many others in the racing community stood with Bubba Wallace when we all thought a hate crime had been committed at Talladega with the news incident. And we saw hashtag I stand with Bubba trending all over social media. It was really nice to see that movement. And more with NASCAR and all of the progressive changes, they created a new position and promoted Brandon Thompson to Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion. And Brandon has years of experience of working in this industry. And Kenny, I understand that Brandon, and with NASCAR giving him this new position, what will Brandon Thompson bring to the table when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, Brandon is a real good guy. I met him actually because of Tam through an email. I talked to him before I had even got an internship, and he helped me out a ton and has given me plenty of advice being in this industry quite longer than me. Still a relatively young guy. I'll give him props for that. He's a HBCU grad as well. He went to Clark Atlanta University way back when. And during his time while he was there, I'm sure he experienced a lot of the same things that I do. And I mean, spending time at a HBCU will just teach you, like, look, you really got to go out there and get it. It's just a difficult world that we, have to, travel. No matter what we do, we can be the best we can. And sometimes we can just get in the way just because of the way we look. And it's unfortunate that it's still like that in 2020. It's pretty sad hearing a lot of those stories like that. But Brandon is definitely going to be at the forefront. Him and Don Harris, who I both work. I work with Don as well through the diversity program. I know they're working on quite a few programs internally and, of course, externally to help out and, of course, bring awareness and bring more of these groups together within the office as well. And, of course, outside of the office to help one another out, especially in these times, because I feel like, sometimes people don't want to step on one another's shoulders. As many of these things happening, we don't know how it affects certain people. Like, I've obviously lived through the era of Ferguson. I've lived through the era of Trayvon Martin. And obviously, as most recently is Breonna Taylor in that situation. And, the stuff is tough. Like, I don't care what you say as a professional Black man in any type of field. This stuff has got to affect you to some degree. I mean, it's not anything anybody wants to, constantly talk about, but it has to be talked about. And I think the best thing is, like with NASCAR being able to make those statements and making those stands, he's been able to help lead those groups. And he's brought all of us all together in groups to talk about these situations before they even happen. And so, like you saw with the Confederate flag situation, that was obviously an internal thing discussed before, so people can learn it. So, people among a group that are seeing this stuff daily can talk about it, be open and be very candid. and then we take action. And that's just going to be an important thing. And I know it may not be snap of the fingers, but, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's just going to take some steps. And I'm glad we have some leaders like Brandon and Don to be able to lead us through these types of times. And it's going to help us out a lot. I'm glad I'm in the industry right now at this time, because if I'm being quite honest, I couldn't have pictured a lot of things that have happened this year. Like, I really couldn't have, and I mean, I didn't grow up in the South that much, so to speak. And, seeing like things like the Confederate flag, it makes people feel a way. And I've had people who want to come to the track and have told me directly, I just can't do that because I'm seeing this, and this is not really, working with my vibe. Like, this is not doing it for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how more of these things happen as we continue to move on through time. But it's going to be a progress, and I'm glad we have some really prominent leaders for this one.
Yeah, very excited to see great leaders like Brandon Thompson in the sport with diversity and inclusion. Now I know he's going to do some great things. I remember when he was working with the regional tour, Matt Weaver gave him credit for helping with the ARCA K&N merger, which was a really big deal. And unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything, I feel like that's really hurt ARCA quite a bit. And hopefully, whatever plan they have for ARCA moving forward, after the pandemic is over or whenever ARCA is able to get back on its feet, I understand that things really aren't where a lot of people expected ARCA would be right now. But none of us could have predicted a global pandemic, and just like anything in life, things just happen, and you have to be able to adjust on the fly. And certainly, with ARCA, really excited, and hopefully they'll get back on track sooner rather than later. And Brandon's leadership there was great, bringing those two series together, K&N ARCA, and also now with diversity and inclusion. I'm sure he's going to be a great leader there as well. And now looking at silly season, which is really kicking into gear, two names in the rumor mill are Bubba Wallace and, yes, Kyle Larson. But first, we're going to start off with Kyle Larson. And I don't need to go through all the details. We all know what happened at Monza Madness when Kyle Larson used the N-word and got himself fired from Chip Ganassi Racing, dropped by Chevrolet as sponsors, and suspended indefinitely by NASCAR. And since then, Larson has really been on a tear on dirt tracks all across the country, and also seems to be educating himself about the world around him as well, according to Jennifer from the Associated Press and some few social media posts that I saw as well. And I have two questions for you, Kenny. And number one, when you first heard Larson say the word that should never, ever be said, what was going through your mind?
Man, it's crazy. That was Easter weekend, and actually I was probably the most zoned out I had been in quite some time, like before the off season. And Easter, I was just enjoying myself. I had dinner with my girlfriend, and that was going to be the highlight of my day. And I was like, yo, chilling, having a great day. And then I had got on Twitter, and my friend Dontre, who was also working in NASCAR social now, he had sent me a message, and I'm like, I had to listen to the video at least twice just to double check, make sure I wasn't going crazy. I listened to it twice. I'm like, okay, this is not necessarily normal. This isn't something you just do. And it's not something that anyone just utters casually. That's just the thing about it. Like, if you know the history of the word itself, it's not just a casual thing. That's like a very deeply rooted term in racism in general. Like, it's a thing that, for one, as someone as young as his age, you have to be around people who are either constantly saying it or have said it a couple of times around him and have been comfortable enough to do so. Like, that's just not something you just randomly say and not have any idea and then be like, oh, it's not like that. That's just not how that works. So I was incredibly disappointed, no doubt about it. I couldn't believe it. It was a shell shocker, because I just never would have had thought, like, nothing would have put two and two together, like, for something like that to happen. And, it sucks that, even worse, like, coming to the diversity program and for something like that to happen is like terrible in its own right. But I was very disappointed. And, I'll be, again, hate using this word as often as I have today, but I'm completely candid. It's just like, look, reinstatement or not, I really don't have, I don't see him in a positive light like how I did before. Just in general, it just kind of damaged my respect for him for the most part. I think it's pretty much virtually gone at this point, because it's just like, man, of all the things you can do, that's just the one thing you just don't have to do. It's really not that difficult not to do it. So it's just kind of a shame in its own regard. So and I know he's done a couple things in Minneapolis and a couple other things apparently that I haven't seen, but that's great that he may be learning and he may be, progressing through that. But I think it just doesn't just take a couple visits to a couple places and snap of the fingers, you're right up and at him and you're all good to go. So yeah, that was just my initial thoughts in general. It was just super disappointed. It was a terrible situation. Like it was horrible.
Yeah, and it's really crazy. I remember everything that happened on that night. It was certainly something that I'd never expected in my life, that a NASCAR driver would actually say something like that. And I was actually watching the Monza Madness stream on iRacing's YouTube channel. So yeah, and just watching, having a good time watching Monza Madness. I'm checking Twitter as well. People are tweeting about it, and then all of a sudden, refresh my timeline, and a bunch of people are freaking out. And they were like, he did not just say that. Then it's like, then I saw Darren Gilliam, Black Flags Matter. He said Kyle Larson did not just say the N word, and then I'm like, what do you mean? And then I saw the video on Twitter. I had to listen to that thing about 5 or 6 times, because at first I was like, he did not just say that word. Then I listen again. I'm like, are you serious? Third time, fourth time, fifth time, sixth time, and so on. I was like, no way. I was just as shocked more than anything. And at the time, I was here at home watching on my TV, because they just UNC Charlotte sent us home because of the pandemic. And then when I saw the video on my phone, I took it to the living room, showed my entire family what Kyle Larson had said, and like our jaws dropped. It was like the most shocking thing, something that we never could have predicted, and this is really crazy, because once the damage was done, I'm wondering, is Kyle Larson about to get canceled here? And I was thinking, if it don't make it to the blue check marks, mainstream media, he might be okay, but once I saw all of those mainstream media outlets picking up, I'm thinking, yep, it's gonna be over for Kyle Larson in NASCAR, at least for a while. And yep, Kyle Larson ended up getting fired by Ganassi. Chevrolet dropped in sponsors at Ganassi, terminated a relationship with him, and then NASCAR suspended him indefinitely, and made him do some sensitivity training as well. Yeah, so it was really crazy, sad to see this happen, because Kyle Larson was a diversity driver himself, and to have an alum of the diversity program, Kyle Larson, Japanese Americans say the N word. It was just really disappointing, especially yes, he was a Star Cup driver at that point, but he began with the diversity program, and they really gave him some opportunities to get his feet wet in stock car racing. And hopefully, moving forward, Kyle Larson will genuinely learn from his mistakes, and and hopefully bounce back from it. And like you said, a lot of people out there, the amount of respect that I have for Kyle Larson is going to be completely gone. I know when I said the name Kyle Larson in front of my mom, I can see her face change completely. Yeah, and from her perspective, she's not gonna have much respect for him, like, ever again, because, like he said in his apology video months ago, he said a word that should never ever be said. And for some people, that word is gonna linger on forever and ever, and they will never forgive Kyle Larson for what he said, no matter how hard he tries to make himself seem like he's changed or clean in other people's eyes. Yeah, Kyle Larson's just basically lost a lot of people forever. And over time, I mean, some people have already forgiven Kyle Larson, and others is just going to take a longer time. And on the other hand, some people just never going to forgive him, and that's just the way it is. And for Kyle's sake, I hope he's really sees why saying the N word is not okay. And I really just hope that everything he's done since then is genuine, instead, definitely don't want to try to make yourself look good and look like you changed when you're really not. But however, no matter how people feel about Larson, it appears that he's eventually going to get his second chance to race in the NASCAR Cup Series once reinstated. And when the time comes for him to return, what does Larson need to do in order to show the public that he's worthy of that second chance?
I think for him, it's just like really being genuine about learning about what he did. Honestly, I think I don't think he'll ever be able to just completely wipe his image as what it used to be. But I think it's just something that comes over time, and it's not something that necessarily you or I can give it like an amount of years, but it will take some time. It's just not gonna be open arms, so to speak. For some people, that is, it won't be. But I know for myself, it's gonna take quite some time. Honestly, I don't know when I'll be like, okay, I've seen the progress, I've seen this. I don't know. It may take a lot longer, but we'll see as he moves along.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens for Kyle Larson moving forward. And the other driver talked about in the rumor mill silly season is Bubba Wallace. And since Bubba started using his platform to bring awareness to all these social issues in our country, it really seems like that's been a major turning point in his career. And Richard Petty Motorsports, Bubba didn't really bring much funding. And it seems like every year, like year to year, you don't really know what Bubba Wallace is going to be doing the following year. And with everything that's gone on, Bubba's gotten a lot of attention from not just people all over the world, but sponsors as well. And yes, yeah, because Bubba decided to speak out on these issues, some folks have said some pretty nasty things about him. It's very unfortunate and sad. But Bubba is only standing up for what is morally right. Yeah, Joe and we've talked about this before on our grid programs. Yeah, and we understand that it's not being political. It's simply about human rights and for what is right. And definitely want to commend Bubba for being a brave soul, speaking out, because sadly, in the world we live in today, the backlash was truly inevitable. And with more attention on him, have several sponsors calling his name: DoorDash, Cash App, and Columbia, just to name a few. And it appears that Bubba's next ride will be a huge step forward in his NASCAR career. How important is it for NASCAR to have a successful Bubba Wallace on and off the track moving forward?
I'm not gonna lie, it was just a big thing, and even beyond like obviously what's happened in the last 6 or 7 months. More so when he first came up, I remember seeing him in the diversity program and seeing who he was as a driver. I'm like, man, this is crazy, because I remember telling my dad a lot about my dad telling me a lot about Wendell Scott, and I did an ample amount of research on Wendell Scott, and obviously over time I've been able to discover the names like Elias Bowie, Willie T. Ribbs, Charlie Scott, Mark Davis, who was a local as well to me. And, a lot of them have made their attempts in NASCAR. And, it's kind of crazy to see stuff like that. And honestly, growing up, I couldn't have imagined it, because it was always my question to my dad. I'd always wondered, where is our representation? Like, I just have never seen it. Of course, over the years, from the pit crews to the industry and to drivers in the diversity program, we've seen a lot more than I probably have, maybe seen in my 25 years. So it's been pretty interesting to see how that's developed. But Bubba getting all this attention is just different. It gives people a different light on the sport. It's almost essentially our budding Tiger Woods. It's like we have somebody who is prominent enough that the casual fan knows exactly who he is and whomever it may be. But I think that just helps him out a ton, getting his face out there. And I think NASCAR definitely can use something like that, especially given some of the stereotypes it's had over the years in his existence. But having him means the world. And then on top of that, having him being able to speak on things like that and having no problem with it. Of course, he's going to get backlash no matter what. Some people are very hateful online, just like you said. Most of those people won't ever say that to his face. No, most of them won't. They just won't. And that's just the crazy part that I see. And it's just amazing to really see that the fact that there's people like that still, and just kicking and just keeping it as regular as can be when it comes to stuff like that. So him being the face of, being a superstar as in like a Chase Elliott or himself, that's huge. Having him at the light, having him at the forefront. So him getting all these sponsors is going to be big. And honestly, depending on how things continue to move, it's probably going to be even better for him as he, picks his brand new team. And once that happens, I think it's going to be a huge stepping stone. It's going to be great for the sport in general. Like it's going to be a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and certainly with Bubba Wallace being in the spotlight more, you mentioned he become like one of those household names in NASCAR. Like you mentioned, the casual fan or just the casual person in general who like doesn't even like watch NASCAR, because based on my personal experience, people who like don't know much about NASCAR but they recognize names, like back several years ago, if I said Jeff, you know who Jeff Gordon is? I'd be like, yeah, racer in NASCAR. Ask someone like who's a NASCAR driver, they'd be able to tell me like Jeff Gordon. Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Tony Stewart, all of them, and, with all of those guys hanging up the helmets, we certainly need those new faces. I feel like Bubba Wallace now, he could certainly be one of those recognizable names when you go up to someone randomly on the street and say, do you know any NASCAR drivers? Maybe Bubba Wallace would be one of the first names that comes to mind. And Chase Elliott is pretty popular, and a lot of the younger drivers that we have right now in the Cup Series garage. If I ask someone who doesn't follow racing about, do you know any of them? And they'll be like, no, never heard of them at all. So I feel like in the mainstream, since Bubba Wallace's name is out there right now, I certainly feel like that's certainly going to help attract new people to NASCAR over time. And one final question for you, Kenny, before we get off here tonight. In 10 to 15 years, where do you see NASCAR in terms of diversity?
I think over the next few years, it's going to definitely step in the right direction, especially given a lot of the turnover that happens with the diversity program, especially on the industry side. I mean, I can probably think about at least about half of my classmates from my original class were, at some point in time part of NASCAR. So I think that's going to keep continuing on. And I think the thing is, it's just like you said, having Bubba being like a face is going to help that cause out as well. Seeing a face like him or seeing a Daniel Suarez makes a huge, huge difference. Like if you can see yourself and you see someone else that looks like you, that's doing something great and something you may want to do that you didn't think you could do, it's going to motivate that person to want to try and get involved. So I definitely think over the next few years or next decade or so, it's going to get better. And trust and believe me, I want to help out as much as I can. Even if I'm not in the sport, I still want to help out with that a ton. Like, I think that's really important. And seeing my friends and seeing my coworkers that look like me is an incredible thing. And I mean, something I didn't really think to see as much as if I was on the outside looking in. But, I hope that growth continues, and I want to see it, and I want to be at the forefront of it, just watching it happen. That's just something I want to always see. So we'll definitely see how that pans out, but I do believe it is going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring up a good point about how it's truly going to help out over the years when you see people that look like you doing the things that you want to do, and just like you, for example, and Dontre Graves with NASCAR social media, it's really cool to see you guys work in the positions that you're doing. And for me right here, senior right now at UNC Charlotte, don't really know what the future is going to hold. Yeah, graduation's coming up May 2021, and it's gonna be time for me to start applying for jobs and looking out there. And when I see guys like you and Dontre working in NASCAR, just like I want to do, working in the same type of positions where I want to be in, it really motivates me and shows that yes, it's possible. I can make it in this industry. And it's really funny because back in, I think it was it was one of my eighth grade teachers told me that working in NASCAR would be a fantasy. So I should pick something that would be more realistic. And that's one thing that's really stuck with me since then, because every day since he said that, I've always told myself in the head, I'm gonna go out there and just prove him wrong. And seeing you and Dontre in those positions working in NASCAR, it just gives me hope for the future that someday I can be in your shoes as well. And also got two young black drivers coming up through the ranks. Got Roger Carruth on the NASCAR side, racing with Rev Racing, really developing nicely in the Legends cars and the late models. Really excited to see what's next for Roger's career. And also IndyCar's launched a diversity program. Got Miles Rowe over there getting some experience in open wheels cars after Team Penske driver Will Power discovered him. So really, really exciting future for Roger Carruth and Miles Rowe. Can't wait to see how they do moving forward.
Definitely, it'll be interesting to see how they are moving forward. Definitely, this has been a wonderful episode. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for being on today's program. I know we really enjoyed having you. We encourage everyone to check out their podcast. We'll have the links below. Definitely tune in, follow the grid ranking as well, and the World Motorsport League. Subscribe and like to our YouTube channel. Kenny, any final words before we go and introduce our musical guest?
Man, I just got to say thank you guys for having me on. It's been a wonderful time. I always like doing stuff like this. throughout time. Obviously, keeps the reps going as well. But it's always great to give back. Joe, Kobe has told me a great deal about you. And I remember when he first told me about how this was going to be a thing and how this was approaching to happen, and you approached him for this to happen. I was like, yeah, man, look, go for it, work out. And I think the great thing I've seen so far from watching y'all is y'all chemistry continues to build and build. And I think that's an important thing for people who are on a podcast or any type of show. It's just, it's two hosts. It's to getting to know each other, whether it's on camera or off camera, and continuously doing that, because as y'all continue to grow, you guys will keep bouncing off each other, and you'll know exactly when and where you guys will talk, who's going to say what, how they may or may not say it. So it's going to be something that'll help y'all out a long, long time moving forward, and it'll help y'all a ton. Y'all will keep getting better, and it's been great to be on. And again, just really thankful for, everything, obviously, being able to be on here tonight. And yeah, thank you guys a ton.
Thank you so much, and definitely encourage everyone, be sure to check out all the links in the video description. For Kobe Lambeth at the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Sanier from the Grid Network. Here's our musical guest, Poulain, with their song, What Did You Decide? Have a good night, everyone.
So someone wrote you a letter. I heard they left you a rose. But don't wait for one better for you to decide. Well, what did you decide? And I think that's great. Someone wrote you a letter. I heard they left you a rose. But don't wait for one better for you to decide. Well, what did you decide? And I think that's great. Someone wrote you a letter. I heard they left you a rose. But don't wait for one better for you to decide. Well, what did you decide? And I think that's great.